And we are back. For over 60 years, Met Council has championed the cause of housing for people, not profit, and tirelessly working to ensure that everyone has access to safe, decent, and affordable housing. And joining me now to share is the Director of Program and Advocacy at the Met Council Housing, Andrea Shapiro. And Andrea, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And when we talk a little bit about housing right now, we know that we're in a huge crisis here
Yes.
in New York City. On your end, do you feel like things are getting better, first of all?
Definitely not.
Okay.
We're seeing one of the biggest housing crises we've seen since the 1970s, with a vacancy rate of almost around 1%. And our government hasn't done anything about it in years.
Yeah, and when we look at a lot of New Yorkers, it's really a struggle. We talk about the economy, we talk about inflation, and we're finding more people are actually spending more money on rent than ever before, and the need for public assistance, tenant assistance, is huge.
It really is, and it hasn't helped that the rent this year was raised by 5% by the Rent Guidelines Board, and that covers 1 million apartments in New York. So we saw large rent increases on top of everything else.
Being a tenant sometimes, I'm just trying to pay, right? You know, I'm working, I'm going back and forth. People get caught, behind in their rent. Sometimes they got a landlord that's really coming at them. I'm not so sure about my rights. So how do I go about necessarily finding out what my rights are as a tenant?
Great. So we have an awesome hotline that any tenant in New York City can call and can give you your rights. It's also always good just to talk with your neighbor. Not sure what to do, talk with your neighbor, talk with your local elected official, go to the library. There's lots of resources in New York. The most important thing is, as a tenant, is to not go it alone.
All right. And so for tenants who have gone it alone, there's help that's out there. They can reach out and get assistance. But at the same time, also, I want to talk a little bit about, this justice that's needed. Because there's a whole lot of people. New York is overpriced. Let's just face it.
Yes.
It's overpriced, right? And I'm thinking about if I get a parking ticket out here, any kind of other thing, I'm up. It goes against my rent. So I guess the big question is, how do we deal with this issue of fair rent, fair housing, and really, as you talk about, not for profit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that we put real controls on our housing. We have so many New Yorkers, especially in the Bronx, who have no protections on their housing. Their rent can be raised easily by $100, $200 a year, and they can be asked to leave with as little as 60 days notice in some cases. And so it's really important that we pass good cause eviction protection this year, and that we fight for long-term universal rent control to really stop the price gouging that we're seeing.
Yeah, let me dial back for a minute. We talked about good cause eviction, right?
Yes.
And that is some legislation that's out there, just in case we want our viewers to know.
Yes.
That's legislation that's out there, designed really to protect tenants in case they ever find themselves in this place. So let's walk back what the legislation actually covers.
Yes. So good cause eviction protection would protect any unregulated tenant. So that means if you're living in a building smaller than 6 units, a building built after 1974, or your apartment was deregulated at some point. And it would mean that you'd have a defense if your landlord raised your rent 1.5% of inflation, essentially, CPI, or 5%, whichever is more. It also means that your landlord has to have a reason to evict you. So you didn't pay rent, you're violating the terms of your lease, you're being noisy, you broke something intentionally. They have to have a reason. Right now, most tenants have no reason why their landlord's evicting them.
Yeah. So if I'm in a situation, I really don't know what to do. You've given me the number to really do that. What about from a political point of view, the legislative point of view? How do I get involved to raise my voice to become a part of this initiative?
Yes, you can join Met Council, and you can find that on our website at metcouncilonhousing.org to get involved, or with a group called Housing Justice for All, which is a statewide coalition. And we're really excited. We're going to go to Albany in just a few weeks, really meet our legislators where they're at in Albany, and just give your local elected official a call, especially in the Bronx, and let them know how important it is that they pass good cause protections this year.
In addition to good cause protections, let's talk about other legislation that's out there that maybe we should be paying our attention to that we don't know about.
I think it's really important to know that the real estate industry is fighting back. And so they're trying to introduce a piece of legislation called the Vacancy Reset Bill. They're claiming that this is about empty apartments and rehabbing apartments, but nothing in the legislation requires them to actually do any renovations. All it would do is put anyone who lives in their apartment more than 10 years at risk of eviction. And that's particularly important in the Bronx, where we see the longest term tenants in rent stabilized apartments.
Yeah. Are we seeing more people on the eviction line, given the fact that we know what happened with the housing crisis with COVID? A lot of landlords couldn't get in, but it seems to be like there's more and more on the eviction court docket.
Yes, we're definitely seeing housing courts are packed to the point where right to counsel is unable to provide lawyers. So that's the program in New York to provide a lawyer to any tenant facing eviction. Particularly in the Bronx, we're seeing that there just aren't enough lawyers out there for all the people facing eviction.
Wow. This number was startling to me. 92,000 people in New York City homeless every year.
And that number's only gone up. We're seeing 1 in 10 children that are considered homeless in New York.
Right. So for yourself, obviously there's a lot of advocacy that's being done, talking to legislators. What's the sentiment that you're getting as you go out there and you talk to these people? Are they sympathetic? Are they saying, listen, we got to do something? Or is it my hands are tied? What are you hearing?
We're hearing a combination of my hands are tied and sympathy, but that's not enough. They're elected officials and their job is to do something. And the Bronx is some of the most powerful elected officials in New York State, and so it's time for them to act.
All right. So when you hear your hands are tied, what do they say behind my hands are tied? What are some of the reasons they say?
They have all sorts of reasons. We know it's the real estate industry that's behind it, and it's time for them to listen to the tenants that elect them rather than the people who fund them.
Yeah. And so your message to viewers out there who are really watching and knowing that this is a crisis that's going on, you want people to be able to tap in and find out. What's the message you send?
Yeah, a simple thing, call your elected official. Know who your elected official is the first step.
And also we talked about legislation, eliminating 421A. I want to go back and make sure that people are very clear about what eliminating 421A is going to be.
Yeah, so 421A is a tax break that real estate got to build lots of luxury apartments. Most people know about it through the lottery apartment system. And it was up for renewal, I believe, in 2021 and 2022. And we prevented it from being renewed. And we're going to continue trying to prevent it from being renewed until there are actually real controls on it to make sure we're getting truly affordable housing.
Yeah. So what is the main issue with 421A?
That it basically means that our landlords and developers aren't paying taxes, the taxes we need for schools, libraries, healthcare, and they're building luxury apartments which are raising the rent everywhere. And they're claiming they're building 20% affordable housing, but we're not seeing actually truly affordable housing. We're seeing $2,000, $3,000 apartments. They're still hard to get.
Yeah. Andrew, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us and bringing us this information. Of course, we want to let you know if there's more information, visit the website at the Met Council on Housing.org. We encourage you don't go anywhere. We've got a whole lot more open coming up right after this.